Second Sex War by Sidsel Minesh Hansen.
Curation. Clean, diligent in its organisation, well-spaced, pristine, ordered, efficient, flawless. Dehumanised. Humans are dirty, particularly in sex. This is something the curation in the exhibition cleanses. The neatened barrier and borders around the material, cleanly contained beneath screen and away from material world, i.e. the new sex. Clean space, framed work through screens and glass panels, detachment and protection, a divine object or space. Methylene blue diluted by female ejaculation is unframed, exposed to the elements, actual, free from illusion, physical tangibility.
Second Sex War includes 3 new commissions: a pornographic CGI animation, a series of laser-cut drawings on plywood, and a large-scale ceramatic relief, which is presented alongside existing works. The exhibition explores the commodity status of 3D bodies in X-rated digital image production, while also reflecting on the artist's working conditions and relationships with her peers. The title, Second Sex War, refers to Simone de Beauvoir's book called The Second Sex, a feminist text arguing that women have always been treated like secondary men. The show embodies Beauvoir's critical text by showing a continuous battle of objectification, finding new platforms to present this through digital technology, the virtual world.
I think the artist, with great complexity, interweaves multiple areas of discussion, including female sexual liberation, gender sexuality binary, accessibility, and the body having a commodity status. I think these themes sort of coalesce across the different works in a very detailed way. I think the artist furthers the discussion by understanding them as intrinsic with technology and also the economic growth in a neoliberal context.
Technosomatic. Industrial complex. Commodity status. 3D cyber bodies. Gender binary. Online consumption.
So methylene blue diluted by female ejaculate is a modest A4 drawing on paper, backed onto a completely plain white wall in the gallery. This wall sits in line with the door, so it's immediately to the back of the viewer. It's also positioned directly opposite to a large flat screen, hyper-realistic 3D CGI animation called No Right Way to Come, which is an avatared female masturbating and ejaculating over the screen. This was sort of done in response to a ban of female ejaculation in adult entertainment by the British Board of Film in 2014. I think it's quite self-explanatory in its defiance and this anti-censorship, which is kind of dictating female sexuality in a way that the artist doesn't agree with. I think this sort of touches on the film screening called Passion Bower, Technology of the Orgasm, which looks retrospectively and enters into the historical discussion of the political and patriarchal shaping of female sexuality, and how the invention of the vibrator
eventually came to liberate female sexuality. And I think the artist is entering into that historic discussion by putting these bits of material into the gallery setting in a defiant move to counter the censorship that kind of went on under wraps by the Board of Film. I think the artist with these two bits of work also considers the audience in relation to the space in which they inhabit, which is between these two opposing bits of work, which speak of the same topic but are quite the opposite in their materiality and form. And I think the artist is using people in this position to contemplate the real and physical, bridging together the physical materiality to hyper-realised cyberspace. And I think she's trying to... I think this is more of a comment on technology and our interactivity with sex and technology both together. I think this kind of use of space and use of the viewer maybe signifies maybe an obsolescence and a relation from the physical, quite organic embodiment towards the newer digitised technology, as this piece of work is far more richer to our senses visually, acoustically, than the small drawing which is immediately to our backs. It's very small and it blends into the whitewalled gallery. I think this kind of touches on the themes of how far sexuality can be pushed away from the real and into the fantasized cyberspace. And I'm not sure whether the artist makes a strong comment for or against that, but I think it is noted by this relationship that these two pieces of work that mirror each other.
Quietly defiant, positioned opposite No Right Way to Come, viewers sandwiched between two works, dualistic relationship, methylene blue diluted female ejaculation, physical and material based, aesthetically reduced. No Right Way to Come, hyper-realistic, idealistic, CGI animation, finely rendered, sculpture, use of latest technology, separate yet facing, referential to the space, distancing of the approaches to sex, evolution, partnership with technology, body obsolete.
Towards the end of my gallery experience, it came to my attention just how much I had become a victim to the technology in the space due to my inability to spot the piece which offered the most human bodily experience. Methylene diluted by female ejaculation is its media and its title. Described by the artist as low-tech manual craft, it remains the smallest, most discreet piece of work in the space, quietly defined and swamped by the more indulging and gratifying pieces. The artist's relationship to the body of work is extremely personal, unlike the body obsolete woodcuts where Hansen gives in to the power of technology, framing its outcomes as if to preserve and protect them, making them feel like divine and superior objects to their audience, in contrast to the neglected presentation of the female ejaculation piece. It is here where the craft of human labour becomes challenged and overridden by a system that remains free from error and is aggressively perfectionistic. In a similar way to how sex through virtual reality has the ability to eliminate distractions that a human in real life gives, able to experience undisturbed sex entirely controlled by us. Described as an infinite tailoring of sex, the power that VR has allowing individuals to create their own sexual experiences could lead to the idea of sex between one person becoming possible, replacing the desire for human embodied interaction and replacing this with commodity and functionality, placing human relationships at risk, leading to the conclusion that by giving sex to the digital world, surely we are only deviating further from the organic, moving beyond what defines us and our experiences.
So methylene blue diluted by female ejaculate is a modest A4 drawing on paper, backed onto a completely plain white wall in the gallery. This wall sits in line with the door, so it's immediately to the back of the viewer. It's also positioned directly opposite to a large flat screen, hyper-realistic 3D CGI animation called No Right Way to Come, which is an avatar female masturbating and ejaculating over the screen. This was sort of done in response to a ban of female ejaculation in adult entertainment by the British Board of Film in 2014. I think it's quite self-explanatory in its defiance and this anti-censorship, which is kind of dictating female sexuality in a way that the artist doesn't agree with. I think this sort of touches on the film screening called Passion Power, Technology of the Orgasm, which looks retrospectively and enters into the historical discussion of the political and patriarchal shaping of female sexuality, and how the invention of the vibrator eventually came to liberate the female sexuality. And I think the artist is entering into that historic discussion by putting these bits of material into the gallery setting in a defined move to counter the censorship that kind of went on under wraps by the Board of Film. I think the artist with these two bits of work also considers the audience in relation to the space in which they inhabit, which is between these two opposing bits of work, which speak of the same topic but are quite the opposite in their materiality and form. I think the artist is using people in this position to contemplate the real and physical, bridging together the physical materiality to hyper-realised cyberspace. And I think this is more of a comment on technology and our interactivity with sex and technology both together. I think this kind of use of space and use of the viewer maybe signifies maybe an obsolescence and a relation from the physical, quite organic embodiment towards the newer digitized technology, as this piece of work is far more richer to our senses visually, acoustically, than the small drawing, which is immediately to our backs. It's very small and it blends into the whitewalled gallery. I think this kind of touches on the themes of how far sexuality can be pushed away from the real and into the fantasized cyberspace. I'm not sure whether the artist makes a strong comment for or against it, but I think it is noted by this relationship that these two pieces of art mirror each other.
What is consuming sexuality? Instant gratification, designed perfectly for our needs without any interruption that would usually come from a human. The quest for perfection and obtaining the unobtainable.
As I entered the Gasparks gallery, the sound of sexual club vibe beats poured from behind the large double doors. The beat drew me towards a large flat screen TV which was suspended from a wooden structure which references Bob Flanagan and Sherry Rose's installation. He explored the association with the male body and how partners are equal. The piece, which is called Dick Girl, immerses the audience with the sound pulsing through the body and how this human-like form, which is named Eva, which at first look is a non-binary form. Eva has a more female-shaped body, but yet an luminous, fluorescent-lit penis attached to her. This questions if Hansen is portraying that if this form has an luminous penis, that it has more power, and whether women without this are not in control. Eva is wrapped around this blob-like form which references the material clay. She rapidly starts moulding and stabbing the blob, which at first comes across as quite a violent act, but as you later go on to see, she is just moulding the blob form to her desire. This violent act relates to how porn nowadays is known for its violent form, and how an anti-porn campaigner, Dal Dines, views porn as in a violent form towards women, and how men or the younger generation will now have this attitude towards women. On the other hand, as Eva moulds and shapes this blob, you see the references and links to how the virtual reality is known for, and how they all connect in a way that's virtual reality. You can create your own desires and fantasies by creating a person, and how that then connects to how Eva is.
Paradox of sex becoming asexual.
The virtual reality Oculus Rift headset opens many gateways to pornography. With already 80 million visitors on Pornhub a day, the VR creates an even more accessible and realistic experience to create human pleasure without a human relationship being necessary. So what does this mean for the next generations in regards to having sexual pleasure or a partner? Can everyone tell the difference between fantasy and reality? Technology is evolving so much that it's becoming more and more difficult to distinguish between what's real and what's fake. So is Hansen pro-pornography or anti-pornography? The pro-sex feminist expresses the liberation of women's pleasure through ejaculating and being in control throughout the exhibition, showing no signs of being against pornography. Using vast technology as a platform to share how capitalism-driven pornography limits ideas of heterosexuality and how women are perceived nowadays. Hansen communicates strong feminist views but as I noticed walking around the exhibition, there is no male form in the space. It is all about females. Even the artists in Corporation Cunt Art, they are all females come together. So is Hansen saying that there is no need for men for pleasure or sex or in partnership? Is there no need for men?
Simultaneously, she frames an anti-porn argument in the work. Through her portrayal of post-human, non-binary bodies, she criticises the ideal pornified woman, which creates a culture of self-hate within society. Within the frame of heterosexuality, men are consuming the mass-produced image of the female body. which establishes a culture of misogyny. Theorist Andrea Dworkin argues the overriding principle of porn is male dominance. She emphasises how porn is for male consumption, and the gaze is implied to objectify and to humanise the female. Due to the oversaturation of porn culture, the viewer will inherently internalise misogyny, which has a deep effect culturally. Another theorist, Gail Dines, argues that boys become violent when exposed to violence in pornography, which influences their sexual identity. Dine writes, "We are held captive by images which ultimately tell lies about."
Kim Little, the professor of women's studies at Ohio University, stated that I think that 3D adult entertainment will continue the process of blurring the lines between fantasy fiction and reality in pornography. And many activists in the anti-porn movement argue for this, and that this sort of blurred distinction between what sex and women look like in real life and what they look like in pornography is contributing to the degradation of women, their bodies and their sexuality. Gail Dines, an anti-porn theorist, said, "We are now bringing up a generation of boys on cruel, violent porn. Given what we know about how images affect people, this is going to have a profound influence on their sexuality, their behaviour, and their attitudes towards women and how they receive sex." Porn culture doesn't only affect men, however, but reinforces the dominance over women. Porn also changes the way women and girls think about their bodies, their sexuality, and their relationships, which Gail Dines also said, and that every group that has fought for liberation understands that media images are part of the parcel of the systematic dehumanization of an oppressed group. The more porn images filter into mainstream culture, the more girls and women are stripped of full human status and reduced to sex objects. This has a terrible effect on girls' identity because it robs them of their own sexual desire. The more porn sexualizes violence against women, the more it normalizes and legitimizes sexually abusive behavior. Men learn about sex from porn, and in porn, nothing is too painful or degrading for women.
Digital platforms like TurboSquirt, from which Eva derives, enables individuals to create fully customized sexual scenes. This liberation of realizing our fantasies has previously been restricted. But what is consent within a digital identity? When an actor scans his body digitally, does he consent his virtual self to be violated and abused? What is the new commodity of the body in the digital age, and what are the ethical and moral boundaries when dealing with biometrics in this way? The questions asked by Hansen about the commodification of virtual bodies defines our generation. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook CEO, claims it will be 10 years before VR is present in our everyday lives, replacing the television set or the smartphone. It is estimated we will spend $5 billion on VR in 2016 alone, which questions our social positions and identity in a world where we can seamlessly slip into virtual lives. Her work relates ideas of feminism and the human body, questioning gender binaries and the exploitation with post-human sexuality, whilst interrogating capitalist schemes of monetization of the human experience of sexuality and bodily function.
His corporate cunt art. Woodcut print, precision, replicable and standardized, part of the corporate model. Minimal effort, largest potential economic gains. Art, as well as the human body, non-human symmetry, idealism, fabrication and detail, mathematic and intellectually synthesized, divisible constituent parts, measurable and quantifiable, negotiated into isolated parts rather than existing as a whole and only as a whole, potential for multiple ownership, foregrounds the body and its industrial complex, introduction of capital, commodification of the body, economic potential. Strong political reference, geographical boundaries taken by a political party on a territorial map of a country, censorship of female ejaculation, access to the body territorial, sorry.
As well as the digital videos in the gallery, 2D images are presented as laser-cut wood prints and are naively stylized, almost like child drawings. They show a figure possessing both breasts and a penis. Some images contain text. I slave. Relating this to Hanson's practice, she combines craft with outsourced skilled digital labour, firstly blurring the lines of authorship while relating to commodity, labour and capital, and the relationship between low craft and high digitised media. She explores our relationship with manual labour. In Fordist theory, she parallels the artists to a means of economic growth and its associated political and social order in advanced capitalism. This is repeated in the clay wall relief Site Workflow Ltd, a clay depiction of a digital face scan. When viewing this piece, we question its relation to the work next to it. The large structure in digital video, the contrast between the low craft and high digital video, converts our bodily structure to a map, to be reproduced, to be sold. Models on websites like TurboSquid are sold for upwards of thousands of dollars. Derivatives of humans translated to digital codes to be played with, to be owned, to be sold. Sexualizing virtual bodies is very complex. Dehumanization is a broad conceptualization in which the human is treated as less than fully human. Eva is beyond human, portrayed as non-binary, post-human, able to morph her sexuality. Virtual bodies have diminished agency, vitality, perceived similarly to objects. Due to the process of manufacturing virtual reality pornography, the creator is allowed to manipulate the bodies into anything they want. Previous studies have shown that virtual representations of women and femininity can trigger sexist reactions. Portrayals of virtual female bodies project misogynistic reactions. Relating to sex, violence is more prominent when pornography is exercised using virtual bodies. A quick Google search of 3D porn or animated porn provides videos portraying animated women being beaten, abused, forcibly penetrated by large objects, by animals, even by fantastical creatures. It blurs the lines of fantasy and consent, post-human sexuality. Anthropomorphism increases perceptions of social potential, and more anthropomorphic images are generally perceived to be more realistic. When the world of virtual reality is a bubble, when inside the Oculus Rift I can do anything to anyone and it has no external effect. VR is a cage when I can execute my wildest fantasies without hurting anyone. A pro of this is desires such as paedophilia or bestiality can exercise within a safe space, the alternative reality bubble. Contrastingly, by enabling individuals to execute these desires, is it enabling and encouraging abuse? What happens when the virtual reality isn't enough for these people?
Submission, artist's relationship to the work, giving into the technology, dissolving, mathematical, technological methodology of production, generated by sterile data, gestural marks, organic in form, the human touch withdrawn, overriding control of the machine, ironic. This method is free from human error and aggressively perfectionist, giving sex over to the digital world, artificial synthesis, further deviates from the organic. The drawings hugely contrast to methylene blue, diluted by female ejaculate, human and real in every sense. Low-tech manual craft, materiality, discussion, modest A4 size display. In response, censorship, female ejaculation in adult films, British Film Board Association, 2014.
His corporate cunt art. Woodcut print, precision, replicable and standardized, part of the corporate model. Minimal effort, largest potential economic gains. Art, as well as the human body, non-human symmetry, idealism, fabrication and detail, mathematic and intellectually synthesized, divisible constituent parts, measurable and quantifiable, negotiated into isolated parts rather than existing as a whole and only as a whole, potential for multiple ownership, foregrounds the body and its industrial complex, introduction of capital, commodification of the body, economic potential. Strong political reference, geographical boundaries taken by a political party on a territorial map of a country. Censorship of female ejaculation, access to the body territorial, sorry, I speak.
Facing putting clay through its reduction, I think is referential to like a mapping or uploading of body features. So the synthesis of an image and how that image can be used or replicated. I think the process of doing that in the clay as well is a very easily replicated process, which is a laser cut architecturally illustrated vagina on plywood. Explores a model design and like a marketable image of the female body. McLuhan says focusing on a woman's specific body part transformed into a locale of iconic power, directed to elicit desire and for aspiration. Thus, the dissembled parts of the female body are dissociated from the individual woman herself and become replicable, malleable, adjustable, desirable components like any other item. So I think, separate from the body as a whole, in this piece of work, the vagina is divided into constituent parts, and the drawing only really references the anatomy. It's kind of become quantified and suggested of a standardized or averaged procedure. So I think there's an interesting link to the distribution and to maybe a mass consumption, or it's reduced and idealized, so it's standardized and ready for consumption or use, or maintaining an image for consumption, a prescribed image for consumption. Again, it's symmetrical and controlled in its proportions. Like it's been corporatized, it's segmented, it has multiple boundaries and areas, and it kind of, for me, it kind of suggests potential ownership. Yeah, I think in reference to McLuhan, it relates to a notion of a prescribed understanding of something that becomes ingrained into society. It becomes something to aspire to or have desire for, and by doing so, the notion is ingested. So unless this idea is challenged of a prescribed image, the image perpetuates consumption, and the consumption will therefore control what the image looks like.
Virtual reality is at the forefront of Hanson's work. Immediately, as entering the minimalistic, pristine white room, the audience is forced to view a very large vegan leather beanbag with a pair of Oculus Rift headsets placed on top. The Oculus Rift headset, which was recently bought by Facebook for $2 million, creates a very immersive experience while laying on the beanbag. The VR headset creates another dimension and world. While turning your head around the gallery, you are faced to meet yourself, an animated version of yourself which has been modified to Hanson's desires. Moulded, and again like Eva on the flat screen, there is an attached glowing blue penis which is penetrating a clay-form blob, being non-human and non-gendered. A very surreal and powerless experience for the audience. As the headset is placed on your head, you have no control over the animation, just control over where you move your head around the space. As you move, certain parts of the gallery fold, causing the audience to become quite nauseous. This also brings into perspective that the virtual reality is not real.
I think the artist plays with notions of gender and the gendered body, and is almost quite provocative in suggesting of a post-gender. We see this in Degas, whereby an androgynous figure is seen to be interacting with an almost like a blob, non-human form, and I think this is commenting on the use of gender binary to accumulate capital, particularly in the pornographic industry. I think it was also suggestive of or even welcoming new technologies which can kind of restore a consumer image with one that's almost created by the consumer itself, as it uses the technology which allows you to create your own fantasies. I think this paired with the VR headset is kind of restoring power back to the consumers rather than buying into a prescribed image. I think also when pairing this video animation with the BDSM framework, which is suspending the screen, I think it's also another clear indicator of how the artist feels about accessibility and censorship, as she's invited maybe like a subculture of sex into a gallery space, which kind of doesn't discriminate from its viewers. The fact that the gallery is free to enter, it doesn't discriminate against class or any sex, gender, for example. Which can be restricted by mainstream culture.
The use of virtual reality, like the Oculus Rift, and haptic feedback and wireless connectivity raises the prospect of violation through combining emerging technologies, such as suits, which provide physical sensations and tactile feedback in response to media. My big hope is that you'll be able to put on a VR headset and reach out to touch and feel. I think it's going to be one of the most useful things for virtual reality in the future, says Zoltan Istan, author of the 2006 candidate for the Transhumanist Party. Turning our consumption from pornography from passive to active transforms our societal and social relations to it, and how possible it is to make the experience not only about sexual gratification, but about the feeling of intimacy, even if that person isn't real. Virtual reality, aided by synced digital aids, may eventually serve as a substitute for human contact altogether. If we can have perfect partners via technology, what impact will this have on human relations and civilization as a whole? It is fundamental that technology drives society, and sex is a cornerstone to the human civilization. Augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and robotics will have a definitive influence on how humanity engages in sexuality. Some ethnicists are requesting a preemptive ban on sex robots, claiming they will destroy social relations, and some request similar for virtual entities. One of the questions surrounding virtual reality is, can our bodies and minds really cope with VR? Manufacturers of devices like Oculus Rift and Samsung urge their users to take at least a 10-minute break every half an hour using the devices due to the significant mental effects it has. Theorists like Chris Milk have drawn attention to the fact that the reality part of the VR experience may pose important questions for human beings. I'm terrified of the world where anyone can create really horrific experiences. It does worry me.